Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to do a full in-depth review of the new Morphe brushes. I had a lovely subscriber ask for me to share my thoughts and opinions on the brushes, so I ordered a lot of the brushes. I have tons of them to share with you. I thought this would be a great idea to put into a video form so that it could be helpful for that subscriber and everyone else that's interested in these brushes. I did my full face routine with these brushes today. I'm going to talk you through every single brush that I have and give you the demo of the product being applied using that brush. And I'm also going to give you some tips and ideas of what else you could do with each individual brush. So if that sounds good, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the complexion and then we're going to move on to the eyes. So let's start off with the face routine for the day. There are two foundation brushes that I purchased. The first one is the M103, which is the angled foundation brush, and the M104 that is just described as a foundation brush. So this one is angled. This is the one that I'm using on my right side of my face today to blend in my foundation, and then the 104 is what I'm using on the left side. So as you see the demo, the 103 that I'm using on my right side is angled, so it's a little bit smaller and a little bit more of like an oval shape when you look at it over the top, and it helps blend in the foundation really beautifully. Again, I haven't had any issues with some of these brushes. I've talked about a few of these in previous videos. They don't leave any streaks on the skin. As you can see as I'm blending in my foundation, there isn't any streaks that you can see with the foundation being applied. I also like the smaller size of this because it actually gets in between the brows, it goes around the hairline, it goes around the temples really easily. So I do feel like this did a great job to blend in the foundation. And then for the left side, the 104, this one is just a little bit more rounded, a little bit fuller. This one does feel like a little bit more of a densely packed brush. This would be great for buffing in skin tints, foundations, and if you like that style of buffer type of brush, you will really like this. Like I said, this is the one that I'm using on my left side today just to blend in the same exact foundation. And again, no streaks, blended in beautifully. Did not pull or tug too much at the skin. Now, this does feel quite more heavy in the hands versus the 103. The 103 feels lighter and more lightweight. And you can definitely tell the difference between the weight of the product when you are feeling the product in your hand, holding the brush, but when you're also applying the foundation. The 103, which is the angled one, was a little bit softer and a little bit more lightweight on the skin, whereas the 104 just felt like it's a little bit more dense. It wasn't painful, it doesn't scratch, it doesn't feel weird or anything. Just kind of know that the one on my left side is mostly a brush that I would recommend for buffing in like skin tints, or if you want to use just a lightweight foundation just kind of buffed into the skin and use very minimal amount of product, that would be great. Or something that's more full coverage where you want to retain that coverage. So both of these are actually really, really nice. Now, if I had to narrow it down and pick just one from these two, I think I would go with the 103, which is the angled one that I used on my right side. Moving on to concealers, there are three brushes that I have in my collection for concealers. I'm going to start off with the right side of my face. This is the M135. This is the concealer brush. I've used this in lots of previous videos before. I've had this brush for a little while now, and I do like this brush. It blends out the concealer really beautifully, and I like that sort of angled look to it. It's kind of like a kitten paw type of brush, but a little bit smaller. And then on the left side, I'm using the 132, the M132, which is very similar to the one that I use for foundation, but just a miniature size. So it's like that angled, really densely packed brush for concealer, kind of packing in the concealer, buffing it in. You can use either one of these for correctors or concealers, and I feel like they both did a really great job. Now for me, I'm partial to the 135 that I use on my right side because I've had that longer in my collection than the 132. But again, both of them are really great. You can't go wrong. Now, if you wanted your concealer brush to be kind of like a smaller version of a foundation, then I would say the 103 foundation and then the M132 would be a nice duo set for face and eye. Now the M133 is also another concealer style brush. This one is one that I did not use, but I did insert a clip of what you could do with it, just kind of giving you a visual for you to see that. This brush is a very densely packed, kind of domed, kind of rounded on the very top edge. So this would be great for using to blend in concealer, of course, that's what it's designed for. But you can also take it and apply your contour directly where you want it. For contour, you want to be a little bit more precise with the application and put in the hollows of the cheekbone, so you can use that brush for that. But you can also use it to sweep eyeshadow across the lid, cream shadows. You can use this to contour your nose. You can use this to contour the jawline. There's a lot of things that you can do with this. So just because I didn't personally use it to apply an actual product to my face today does not mean that it's not a great brush. It's just one that I didn't use because I already used 2 different concealers and I had other brushes for other parts of my routine that I wanted to use instead of using this. But this is actually a great option to use for different multiple steps, and that is the M133. Next up is the M243, and this is actually a very unique brush, and I don't have anything in my collection quite like this, so when I saw this, I definitely had to grab this one. This is for cream and liquid contour, and as you can see from the demos up close, it is a different style shape of brush. It is kind of like a paddle style, but it is also angled, so the bristles are a little bit shorter towards the front, and as it gets towards the back, they're a little bit longer, and they just have a really beautifully cut taper. The bristles feel incredibly soft. So I'm going to show you this M243 brush for doing the contour steps. So what I did on one side, on my right side, I applied the product to the brush and kind of blended that in. And I think I did a beautiful job at blending in the contour and keeping it in place exactly where I wanted my contour to be. Same brush on the left side. This time I decided to take the contour stick that I was using for today and swipe it directly onto my skin and then go in with the brush to blend. And it did a good job. I personally prefer using the brush and swiping across the top of my stick products, or using my hand as a palette to pick up the product first before blending in the product, versus putting the product onto the skin and then coming in to blend with the brush. I feel like this brush did a wonderful job for contour, and I am so happy that I have this brush. It's quite unique and different. There are probably others on the market that are kind of similar to this style, but I honestly think that this one is one of my most favorite brushes out of the bunch that I'm reviewing today, and that was the M243. For cream and liquid bronzers, the M242 is a great brush. It's again one of those more angled cut brushes. It's short on one end and it gradually gets longer as it moves towards the back. But what makes this brush different than any of the other ones that I'm talking about in this video is that it is a dual fiber type of brush, where the bristles on the tips feel like a stipple style brush, and then it goes into those antibacterial gray bristles as everything else in this collection. What I like about this is that it was wonderful for bronzer. It blended in my bronzer really, really well, and I used a stick bronzer. I warmed it up on the back of my hand and then went in with the product that way. I personally like to do it that way because I get to control the product better and I get a better blend versus going directly in with the stick. So blending this bronzer in with this brush, the M242, was great. I like the size of it. I like the weight of it, the feel of it, holding it in my hands. It felt very substantial. And I felt like I was able to blend my bronzer without getting any streaks. And it just kind of went right over everything else that I had previously applied without any streaks, without disrupting anything underneath. And I think that this is one of my new go-to brushes for cream bronzers. Next up for blush, I'm going to show you the cream and liquid blush brush, and that's the M204. I actually have 2 of these, and this is a great brush. It's a really small size brush. It's rounded, where the kind of bristles are slightly tapered and kind of shorter on the left and right side, but then a little bit longer as it comes towards the center with a very slight kind of point to it. But overall, it's going to be more of a rounded edge over the top of the bristles. This is actually really nice for blending in the cream and liquid type of blushes, and it did a nice job. Again, I have no complaints with any of these brushes. It blended in my blush just fine. I used the liquid today, and again, I worked it from the back of my hand instead of directly applying, but you could do that too and then use this brush to blend, and I'm sure you're not going to have any issues doing it that way either. But I like this brush for blending and kind of tapping and buffing in the blush. You could also use something like this for your cream and liquid bronzers as well, or your contours if you want something just a little bit fluffier than that first one that I showed for the contour, the M243, which is the one that has that different cut to it. You could use something like this. You can use it for concealer, you can use it for foundation. It's a really nice size for a lot of different steps. Now for powder blush, I always set my creams with powders, and I actually have 2 different brushes for that step. If you like powder blushes, I'm going to show you 2 different ones that I think are really great. So on the right side of my face, I'm using the M201, which I've used before in previous videos. It's an angled cut, as you can see, and it's very soft, very wispy, and it just has like this lightness and this airiness to it. So when you apply your blush, it's kind of like lightly grazing your skin and applying the product, but it never looks heavy and never deposits too much product. It just looks really beautiful when you blend in your blush products with it. You can also use this to lightly dust powder all over your face if you don't like to use a powder brush for that step. You can also use this for highlight, for bronzer. You could do so many things with this one brush, but I like it for blush. Now on my left side, I have the M202, which is again another angled brush, but it's very different. And I will show you a comparison between the two brushes. One is a little bit larger, a little bit softer, a little bit more loose with the bristles, the way they're packed into the ferrule. But this one that I'm using on the left side, the 202, has those kind of short bristles at the front, and then it gradually gets longer. And you can see how it has that taper, but it is a little bit more kind of rounded on the top with a bit of a point, but it's also kind of flat. When you look at it from the top angle view, it's a little bit flat. So you can just kind of press and pat in your blush. You can buff it in. You can also use this for contour because of that angle. You can put that angle right in the hollows of your cheekbone. You can also use this to apply bronzer. You can use it to contour your nose using the longer end of the bristles to go on the sides. It's a little bit softer and a little bit more wispy, but it will get the job done as well. And you can also use this brush to set under the eyes. It is a little bit larger, but still, again, it will do the job just nicely. And I really do like the M202. And out of these two brushes, I honestly can't pick because they do the same thing, but they also serve different purposes beyond just applying the powder blush. So I love them both. Do you need them both? No, you don't. You just pick the one that you think you would use the most out of both of these. Next up is the M241, and this is a powder bronzer brush. And I do like this one because it is a little bit more of a densely packed brush, but it also has that angle very similar to like the foundation brush or the smaller concealer brush and the blush brushes that I just recently spoke about. It has that angle. Again, the bristles are beautifully cut. There's not one that just kind of randomly sticks out longer than the other. Beautifully done, beautifully made. And I do love this brush for applying the bronzer. And even though the bristles are very densely packed on this one, it feels just a little bit more kind of dense. It did not deposit too much bronzer. And again, I picked up a small amount and kind of worked it off the back of my hand, knocked off excess product. But it didn't look too heavy. It didn't look muddy. It actually kind of gave me a nice kind of bronzy look. And this is just really beautiful. And you could use this for other things as well. Maybe not so much for blush because it does pick up a little bit more than the blush brushes in this collection. But you could, if this is the only brush you had, or if you took this with you and you forgot on travel to take a blush brush, you could get it done with this. You just have to be really careful with the amount of blush that you pick up with this. But this is great for bronzer, and you can also use this one for powder. Moving on to powder. I have 3 different brushes that you could use for this step. You don't need all 3. You could just pick the one that you are most interested in. I have the 161, the 162, and the 163. So let's start with the 161. This one is quite the large size for powder. This will get your powder done very, very quickly, and I actually really do like this. It feels very hefty, very weighted. Again, the bristles are slightly tapered on the sides, but it comes to that really beautifully rounded point on the top end, and it's a really nicely full brush, but there is a little bit of give and flexibility. Even though it feels substantial and densely packed, there is a little bit of movement to these bristles. So when you go on your skin, I'm going to show you the demo, you can just kind of pat, or you can also kind of buff in the loose powder, press powder, whatever it is that you're applying, and just get the job done really nicely. And because it's rather large, it covers a larger surface area, and it gets that step of your routine done very, very quickly. Now from that, you can go to the M162, which is a little bit different. This one has a little bit more of a taper. When you hold it on its side, it kind of tapers on the left and right side, and it comes to a more of a point in the very center of the brush. But it fans out and it's a little bit wider because the ferrule is pinched at the base. So it has that kind of taper and it comes to a point, but it's kind of wider left to right when you're looking at it from the front view of it. So if you take the label facing that towards you, you will see how it kind of fans out a little bit more than something like this. So you can see the difference there. Again, same thing. You can use that flat side and just kind of tap your powders. You can tap in some bronzer. You can buff in your bronzers. You can do blush with this. Again, it's going to put too much product, maybe a little bit too much blush on the face, but it's something that you can use if you only wanted to purchase one brush to kind of knock out a couple things. You could do that as well. You just have to be careful when it comes to the blush part, but you can just tap in and buff in any sort of powder-based product over your foundation and get it done beautifully with this. And then the final one in the powder category that I have is the M163. This one is quite different. The cut is different. And honestly, I don't have anything in my collection that is quite like this. It is a very different style brush, as you can see. Again, it has that tapered where it's a little bit shorter and kind of tapers a little longer as it gets towards the center. But it has almost kind of like a fan look to it. And when you turn it on its side, you can see that the ferrule is much different than the ferrules used for the other brushes. And it does kind of pinch the bristles right here at the base. So at the very top of the ferrule, which is the base of your bristles, it's kind of pinched a little bit differently than something like this that's a little bit fluffier and wider. This one has, like I said, a different shape. So this one is great for, again, kind of pressing in powder in your T-zone for touch-ups where you don't want to disrupt your makeup. You can also put it on its side and use that sort of rounded edge and use that to apply your powder contour. I don't know if I would use this for liquid and cream contour, but maybe a powder, sure. You can use this for powder all over the face. You can also use this for bronzer as well. It's a powder brush, so it's not really designed for any one specific type of powder. You can do different things with it, and that was the M163. Now that we've talked about the face brushes, let's go in and talk about some eye brushes, and let me show you a demo using them for today's eye look. So the first brush is the M332. This is the eye blender. This one is a really small, kind of almost like an eyeshadow brush, but a little bit softer, a little bit fluffier, not quite as densely packed. And it's a little bit softer for blending in the crease. So I like this brush because it's rather small, so I can really get really precise in my crease. If you have hooded eyes, you want to use something smaller. Something like this would be really great. But if you don't have hooded eyes, you can still use this for crease work and blending and applying the actual colors, transitions, crease colors, anything that you want to use in your crease area. The M331 is an eye blender, but this one is quite different. It is tapered and it comes to a really nice point where you can use this to really get right into your actual natural crease area. You can use this to blend in your products. You can use it to apply something really close to the base of the lashes to smoke out some dark eyeshadows. You could also use that point and get right underneath the lower lashes to create a little bit of a smoky eye on the lower lashes or to blend out some darker colors. So those are the two brushes that I have for the crease. Now moving on to some brushes for packing on eyeshadows or putting on product on the lids. I have two of them and they are different in sizes but essentially the same style. So it's the M302 and the M303. So they're both eye packer brushes. One is a little bit smaller, so I use a smaller one to pack on the eyeshadow. And you can also use the larger one as well and kind of do the same thing. Again, it's the same style brush, just one is smaller, one is a little bit more of a medium size. And then I also did use this to pack on some loose glitter over the top, like an eye topper, just to add a little pizzazz for the day. But again, getting the job done beautifully with both of these brushes. And then I also use some other more kind of smaller pinpoint style brushes to do some defining, some smoky eye work on the lower lashes. So I use the M383, which is the eye detail brush, to apply some product on the lower lashes. And again, it's kind of like a really small style pencil brush, which is great for under the eyes or using to use powder shadows. You can use it for, you know, more of an outer V type of brush if you wanted to. Inner corner work as well, brow highlight. And then the M382, which is described as an eye detail brush. This is a must in my collection because I like having these types of brushes for lower lashes. The smaller the brush, the better it is for really dark eyeshadow. So I use this brush to apply some dark colors to the lower lashes. But I also use this small little eye packer brush to use for powder shadow liner today. And because it's an eye detail brush, I also showed you how you can use this brush for a very tiny baby wing. Using a powder, I don't do wing liner very often, but it was very easy for me to get just a tiny, tiny little wing going with the same powder shadow that I used as my main eyeliner for the day. So those were the brushes that I used for the eye look today. And then the final one is a brow brush, is the M401. And I actually did forget to use this today for my brows, but it's an angled on one side that you can use for brow powders, but you can also use this angled side for liquid liners, for cream liners, gel liners, things like that. On the opposite end, you have a spoolie, which is great to comb through your brows or to comb through your lashes and remove any clumps. Comb your lashes before applying mascara if you wanted to kind of give them a nice comb and groom them first. Again, you can use this to groom your brows before applying your products, after your products are applied. So it's a really nice little tool that's double-ended that you can use for your brows and your lashes as well. For the face, out of all the ones that I have, these are the ones that I feel like are the most unique. So I'm going to kind of zip through these. If I were to purchase a set of brushes or to build a collection from scratch, if I had nothing, this is what I would buy. The first brush for foundation is the M103, that angled brush. I would go in then for concealer with the M135. For my bronzer, I would go into the 242, which is the angled that has that stipple look to it on the very ends of the bristles. For the contour, I would definitely get that 243 because it's different and it did a great job for contour. For my blush, I would go into the M201, which is the soft kind of angled wispy brush for blush. And then the final brush for the face is the M162, which is a powder brush, because this one is rather smaller compared to some of the other ones in this collection and some of the ones that I reviewed earlier, and that I can use for a lot of different things, not just powder, so that's why I would choose the M162. Now, if I needed to build a collection of eye brushes to create eye looks for every day, I would honestly pick these same exact brushes that I use today. The only thing that I would add to this that I don't have is something a little bit larger and fluffier, and I do believe that they make one like that, which is like a larger blending crease brush. That's the only thing that I would add to this, but I feel like with these brushes, I was able to get a really nicely blended eye look, so I would definitely buy all of these. Okay, wow. So we covered a lot of ground today with the brushes each individually reviewed and demoed, plus the brushes that I would personally buy if I was building a collection for face and eyes. And there's so much information in this video. I hope that this is helpful. I'm going to link every single brush down below for you. If you have additional questions on these brushes, please feel free to reach out to me. I also want to note that I did pay for all of these myself, and I do stand by my opinions on them. I do think that they are really well done and well made. They did a great job of blending in my foundations, my blushes, my products, everything for the eyes. I had no complaints. And also another thing I do want to plug in is that I did wash these when they arrived in the mail. Not everybody washes their brand new brushes, but I did because I wanted to be able to tell you that they wash well, they dry nicely, and they go back to their original shape. They don't look funky or weird. These were all washed prior to today's video, and I also have used some of these previously before today, so I think that they did a wonderful job, and when they say reimagined, they did. Morphe is definitely killing it, and these brushes are great. So thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.